If you get worried when you fly or you are even terrified, this next just under 50 minutes is completely golden for improving how you feel on board our aeroplanes. I was lucky enough to be a guest on the LoveFly podcast with Paul Tizzard, who used to fly, and he now owns one of the best fear flying companies, I would say, in the world. They do face-to-face courses, and he has an amazing podcast called the LoveFly podcast. I was a guest on it 3 times now, I think. This is the first episode. It's just under 50 minutes of me being grilled by Paul on all things fear of flying. So sit back and listen to it. It's going to make your next flight feel much safer and secure. He's an expert podcast host, really puts you at ease, and hopefully a lot of information comes over. So without further ado, here we go.
So welcome to the LoveFly podcast, and this week we are talking to the one and only Flyman Simon. That is just, I didn't mean to rhyme it quite like that, but it just happened. I hope that's okay, you forgive me. But I've been trying to get you on the podcast for ages, and a lot of people in our LoveFly Facebook group follow you, so that's how I came across you. And I can't believe our paths haven't crossed yet because of our backgrounds. But welcome, thank you.
Thank you, Paul. What an introduction. Hope I live up to it.
Yeah, oh, definitely. Yeah, that's it. No. So tell us about yourself. Tell us what you do. Don't hold back, and then I can just shut up and listen.
Yeah, I'll give you the short-ish version
Right.
that I always had a love of aviation. When I was a kid, I always wanted to fly aeroplanes. My granddad got me into it, taking me to a local museum, aircraft museum, and to the local airport. I always had a love, and believe it or not, air traffic control was the first one when I went on the first holiday that I remember anyway, flying through the cloud and all the rest of it, thinking, how do these aeroplanes see where they're going and everything with the not being able to see out the windows, and air traffic was my first sort of love. And then as I got older, I realized that I wanted to be a pilot. I applied to the Air Force. They ended up filtering me to be an engineer for 4 years. So I ended up servicing the Tornado engines of the aircraft that I wanted to fly. And then I got my lucky break about 4 years in, went for pilot, got it, did about 5 years of fast jet flying.
Yeah.
And then again, as life has filtered me forever, really, I got pushed towards multi-engines, and very luckily got the Boeing C-17. Did 10 years on that, flying the A350 now, and just got my command. But I've always wanted other people to love flying as much as I do.
Yeah.
So even when I was in the Air Force, I used to go down the back. I used to say to the Loadmaster, if there's any nervous, a lot of them were soldiers or they were family, I'd go down and just have a quick chat, find out what was wrong with them. And I suddenly realized that actually it doesn't take a genius, a top psychologist that just needs a little chat and simplify something and tell someone you can actually take away a lot of their fears. So yeah, my real love now is, as well as flying, is trying to make people love flying as much as I do, and we do.
Well, okay, that's great. So you've given me lots of little things that I can pick up on. I didn't know that about your background in terms of you also been an engineer. Now, that's really interesting because not every pilot will necessarily have that in-depth understanding, but you could fix it as well. I mean, this is just impressive.
Gives me faith in the engines. Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I bet it does. Yeah, I bet.
And when the engineers sign things off and they just hand us the tech log and say this has been done, I actually have a full understanding of the real complexities that have gone on, the secondary, tertiary checks, regulation, manufacturing. How often things get changed out before they're even anywhere near failing. And so yeah, it's a fantastic insight. It really has been.
And do you ever sort of let on about your secret past, or do you just sort of?
Some of the guys actually, there's a couple of guys at Heathrow who were in the Air Force with me, and I'm shocked. What are you doing here? And they're like, what are you doing here? You're in the flight deck. I'm like, oh yeah. So yeah, it's great to see people get on. And
it's a really interesting journey as well, to go from sort of, you knew you wanted to go into aviation in some way or another, and then the route has been quite sort of squiggly, hasn't it? And one thing's built on another. That's really interesting. So tell us a bit about your life now. What you're doing.
So yeah, it's been an amazing journey so far with the airline that I'm at. COVID obviously happened. I was very lucky to be I wasn't lucky to be grounded, but I was lucky in what happened when I was grounded. I went for operations director role, so running our big command center that deals with all the aircraft crew, pilots, outstations, airports, and everything. So I had 20 months of dealing with all the problems that brought, as well as everything else that affects an airline, like volcanoes going off in St. Vincent, and a million other different things, computer failures and all sorts of other things with air traffic control. And and everything. So I had almost a couple of years there, and then just over 2 years back flying now, back as a first officer. Then I got my command course. So I've just been through well, it's probably about 4 or 5 months through the ringer. I've been pushed to the limit and everything to prove
Yes.
that I've got what it takes to be a captain and command the aeroplane. And then I've got married in between. There's I don't do things by halves.
No,
So
no,
I had an
exactly.
extremely busy summer, which is why anyone who does follow me on social media has probably realised that I've been a little bit quiet. I wanted to keep my
Mm,
head down, probably a sensible thing, while and concentrate 100% on
yes.
the command course, and then any spare time on the family after that. Whereas now I have a lot more free time now. So yeah, I've had some big plans in action. So hopefully I can hit the ground running and get back on the social medias and help people again with
Yeah,
the fear of
you've
flying.
got a hell of a following.
Well, yeah,
What do you
it's
think it
very
is about
lucky.
you that they like fly? What
Um,
is it?
I don't know
Flyman
if I just
Simon.
got a little bit lucky. My brother's a singer-songwriter, and he posts some amazing videos of the insight of what it's like to run a band. And he gets a few hundred on some, maybe 1,000 on another, and that's a big success. And it is when you look at some people's numbers. And then
Mm,
something about turbulence and about just a fear of flying. I don't think that many people are that open about a fear of flying. It's not something they just openly say unless they're visibly
yeah.
scared on an aeroplane.
Mm,
So I think as soon as your social media feed realizes that you watch a minute long, a person chatting for a minute long on social media, the algorithm picks up, and then you start feeding it. And because most pilots, it's their worst nightmare to stick themselves in front of a camera and talk and put themselves on social media.
mm,
Then yeah, I think I got a little bit lucky, and I suppose I'm quite good at simplifying complex
yeah.
problems and
Yes.
just making it an everyday thing. And um, I think it's the proofs in the pudding that I've spent a lot of time chatting to passengers over the years, just
Mm,
because I'd go down and try and
yeah.
reassure them, and that practice has paid off because stick me in front of a camera and put me on social media, and it's I've rehearsed it accidentally so many times, chatting to people
Yes.
and telling them how safe airplanes are and
Mm,
flying is, and how
mm,
amazing it is when the world that airplanes open you up to, visiting friends, family, business trips, holidays, special events, and everything. I think it just comes across, and
yeah.
yeah, I've got lucky because I think it's 100,000 now on TikTok. I'm going to concentrate a little bit more on Instagram now as
Mm,
well. um, I've saved up some of my allowances when I haven't been online, and I've been revising for my command course, and I've bought a expensive mic, lights, and camera and stuff. So yeah, hopefully people will see a lot more videos from me soon.
yeah. I mean, that's quite a commitment that you're doing, isn't it? To do that. What
Um,
keeps you going?
um, Again, I accidentally fell onto sort of like a social media business model by accident. I realized when I was posting different things, when I was on the ground, actually, I was posting how we look at weather, the problems we've got around the world from a ground perspective.
Mm,
And I suppose it taught me what people watch and what they don't watch, viewing
yeah.
wise.
Yeah.
Um, so then that got me realizing what people want to listen to and what to talk about, what they want to be reassured. And then yeah,
Mm,
I started to ask people to ask questions at the end of the video. So I'd
okay.
sort of say, if anyone has any other questions on a fear of flying, because people are scared of all sorts of different things,
Yeah. Yeah.
then stick a comment, and the best one gets a live video response from me. Fly happy, fly safe, which was just some tagline that I stuck on the end. And then I would get hundreds of comments saying, I hate it after takeoff when it sounds like the engines have failed. I hate it
Yes.
when there's beeps and bells and sirens in the cabin and I don't know what's going on. That scares
Mm,
me.
mm.
So then it's like a self-licking lollipop sort of thing. People put comments in, and I go, oh, that would make a good video. Hit record, stick the video online, and then I get a load of other ones. So yeah, it just seemed to
Can we just
just seemed
pause
to
for a
work.
moment? Where did the on earth did self-licking lollipop come from?
It's a northern thing from the northeast. My grandmother used to say it. So yeah, if something goes around in circles and feeds itself, she used to call it a self-licking lollipop, as if it's a great invention.
That's a great idea. I might have to use that and claim it off. So, what do you notice that people are most worried about?
um, I'd say the majority of people are a turbulence, being stuck in what they perceive to be a small space, when actually it's
Mm,
quite a huge space inside of an
mm,
airplane. But what they perceive to be a small space, and then it is pretty much. I mean, they have a fear of dying, obviously, which
Yeah.
is obviously a self-defense mechanism. We all have. Everyone's scared of that.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, and then it's just a mixed bag of everything. You have some really what you would traditionally think is quite out there and you can't really get your head around, but to them it's the biggest thing in the world, and that's what's important. That to them it is the biggest thing in the
Yeah.
world.
Yes.
And I've tried to chat to some people, and no matter what you say, they go back to being terrified. And I think those people with that sort of fear, they do need, not specialist help sounds like it's
Mm.
something bad. I mean, I think they need a qualified psychologist who can sit down and talk
Yeah.
through, when someone explains to you that it's safe and why it's safe, and they've simplified it and they've chatted and they've reassured you and they've done all that. If they then need more help, then I think you do need to be a specially trained person to get over that. What I'm trying to be is, and I think what a lot of us are, yourself and Captain Chris and a lot of the others, that we're just trying to reassure people. We're trying to say it in the most simplest
Yeah.
terms so they understand, because no one really gets told, do they? The industry spends a lot of time and money on advertising, on showing you the destination, and these fantastic holidays and trips around the world. The bit when the doors close to when they open on board, no one says anything other than they shove a safety card in front of you, and then they start talking about the aircraft being on fire or ditching in the sea. Which, no wonder people are terrified. What you need to realize is that's the similar thing when you go and visit an office building. The first thing they do is give you a fire brief, and where you would
Yes.
the muster point outside. It doesn't happen, but that's like people going into an office and being terrified of it catching on fire. It's so yeah, I try and simplify it all, really, and try to make people understand in a way that they realize it is safe,
Yeah.
and that they've got something to come back to to remind themselves how safe it is, and that they
You do that really well. You do that
yeah,
well.
they understand the industry, they understand the manufacturers, they understand the training, the regulation, and everything else. Yeah, that's really the main points to concentrate
Yeah,
on.
I think you've got a bit of a knack for putting it very simply. And I thought, would it be a bit of a cheek just to say, just because people that tune in will be delighted because they love hearing from pilots. So out of all the podcasts, probably the pilots and some people's individual stories, but it's generally the pilots and the technical people that get the most kind of downloads. And I don't think you can tell people enough about turbulence and why it's safe and all that sort of stuff. So I thought, get you on with your knack for explaining things simply. Maybe I'll ask you, right, okay, so somebody says to you, I'm really worried about turbulence.
Yeah.
What would you say? And maybe there's a couple of others that spring, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no problem at all. I think the biggest issue that people have is we all grew up with these adventure films that are really exciting to watch, and the many TV shows and movies, if they have anything to do with an aeroplane, the oxygen, there's shaking, there's lights flashing,
Yeah.
everyone's screaming, oxygen masks come down.
Yeah.
Next thing, the aircraft's diving towards the ground, and everyone's an issue. That's what we're fighting from day one, really. That everyone's had that drilled into them. That's reality. Just like Jaws, if you go swimming, a shark's going to kill you. It's pretty similar. When actually the reality is we get trained to such a high level. We fly little airplanes first in turbulence, and we get to know what it's like, and then you get to bigger airplanes. And actually, I think one of the facts that make people realize that it isn't dangerous is actually pilots intentionally fly into turbulence. Sometimes we don't fly into clouds. We don't fly into severe turbulence on purpose when it's to do with weather or. But if we want to get into a jet stream, so I flew last week back from Atlanta. It should have taken about 9 hours. However, there was a 180-mile-an-hour jet stream, which, for those who don't understand, it's a huge column of air, miles and miles across, thousands of feet deep, and it runs for hundreds of miles across the whole Atlantic sometimes. If it's doing 180 miles an hour, we can add that to our normal speed of, say, 550, 600. So we can end up doing 750, 780. So that reduces the time from 9 hours from Atlanta to Heathrow to 7 hours 31 the other day for me it was.
Wow.
But the air around that huge column, that huge jet stream, is like in your back garden doing 20 miles an hour, 30 miles an hour, even at altitude it can be, and it's suddenly got to move from that speed to 180 miles an hour. Now that does cause the air to churn up, just like if you fired a hose pipe into a swimming pool. That fast jet would churn up all the rest of the water and it would cause some currents. We have to fly through that churned up air to get into the 180, and normally it's quite smooth once you get into the jet stream. And that has several factors. One, the customer gets to their destination quicker. Two, we have less wear and tear on the engines because it's an hour and a half less flying. It's an hour and a half less burning of fuel. It's an hour and a half on the ground that the aircraft can be made, extra maintenance can be done that needs to be done, that can be fitted in. So there's a lot of advantages, and that's, say, one of the times where we would intentionally know that we're going to encounter turbulence. We'd put the seatbelt signs on. And it just proves that we wouldn't go near jet streams if turbulence was really dangerous and it would damage the aeroplane. So that hopefully that reassures people.
That's great.
There's then been decades and decades and decades of instances where people have accidentally got themselves into bad turbulence in big thunderstorms and weather, and we learn from it every single time. So we spend there's hours and hours goes into each flight, from the airline operations departments, the weather, the flight planning, to make sure that we avoid the turbulence. Then the air traffic control in the area, they look at all of their radars, they check the weather, we speak to each other as pilots, we do everything we can to avoid the really bad turbulence. And even that, with seatbelts on, it's just uncomfortable. It makes it can make some people feel sick. It can shake things around. It stops us doing a meal service, so the pilots don't get to eat their dinner on time.
Well, you don't want to do that to a pilot.
But yeah, it really is. It's uncomfortable, but it's safe. Is the main thing.
I like that, and I like the hose pipe into the swimming pool thing. That's a good way to describe a jet stream. I hadn't thought about it like that. That's really that's very, very clever. That is. Makes perfect sense. And I think the main message that people will take from that is that, so it's uncomfortable, but it's not dangerous. And you avoid it for comfort, and you go into it deliberately just for a bit of speed and all those other benefits. That's really useful. Okay. So there's something that people often say to us about turbulence, and they love the pilots to speak. So I know that anyone who goes on one of your flights, you'll know the right amount of chatter. But a question that we used to ask on our big group courses, right? So you get on board your flight, you're going to do 9 hours somewhere, right? And the pilots know, or pretty much know, that halfway through the flight, there's going to be a bunch of turbulence. Do you want to know at the beginning of the flight, or do you just want to wait to find out? And literally it would divide a room. Some would say, I'd rather know, so then I can prepare for it, and then I'm okay. And the others would say, no, I don't want to know, because then I've got to spend 4 hours worrying about it, and it might not even happen anyway.
Yeah.
What's your view on that?
So again, I can use another example of last week. The turbulence, on our flight plan, we have 0 to 9 for turbulence. Wind, well, it's shear, which is exactly what I've just spoken about. The wind doing 20 miles an hour, and then a few miles later, it's 180 miles an hour. And in between, there's that shearing, and that's where the turbulence is. So we had 9s for about 45 minutes, which we tried to look, could we avoid it? We couldn't. Is it dangerous? No, but it's going to have issues with the service. So if we told all of the passengers and the crew, and I mean, we'd let the crew know that there was a possibility, but if we'd get everyone up for this awful hour and a half of being shaken around terribly, people would have been really anxious, really worried. An actual fact, it didn't happen at all. There was a few little rumbles. We put the seatbelts on. For a couple of hours, we were speaking to air traffic. We were speaking to other aircraft ahead. Is there any turbulence? What levels are best? And no one was encountering this turbulence. Now, there's two sides of the coin. One, the models and all of the meteorologists and the forecasters and everyone else, the scientists, can say, we think there's a real high chance of moderate to severe turbulence in this area. So they will tell us about it, obviously. But it hardly ever happens where they get it wrong. It's either they forecast it and it's there, or they forecast it and it isn't there. It generally takes us that much by surprise very often. It's so good and so accurate now that it's very rare for it to suddenly take us by surprise. It can happen, which is why we always say have your seatbelt loosely fastened, but it doesn't seem to. So in that event, I think it's best to not to not tell the passengers. I like to chat now, and luckily I'm in the left hand seat, so obviously as the captain I can make PAs when I want to, but it's a fine art of when to do it. So the other night, we a couple of weeks ago, I did have some turbulence for about 20 minutes. I've been told there was a couple of nervous flyers, and I had to make a judgment call of, it was getting into a jet stream again. So I just wanted to reassure people this
Yes.
is expected, and it's there because it should be there because of the
Mm.
reason of the jet stream.
Mm.
But you've got to think, am I going to wake anyone up?
Yes.
Am I going to terrify someone who doesn't want to? I'm going to interrupt everyone's movie to do a quick chat. And then so I chatted to the crew, and they said no, everyone's awake. I think they'd probably be reassured because we stopped the meal service in the middle, so a few people are upset about that.
Yeah.
So I just made a quick PA and said, look, just to let you know, you obviously realise that we're in some turbulence. To reassure any nervous flyers, this is completely expected. We didn't expect it to last so long, but it should only last for another 10 minutes or so, and then I'll be able to take the seatbelts off. But that apparently reassured a lot of the passengers. But as for doing a brief every trip, telling someone whether there's turbulence or not, with short haul, if you're only going to do an hour's flight or something, you know it's going to be there, it might be. But for a 9-hour flight, you're just going to worry people that are miles and miles out. So,
well, I think the main thing is that you hit upon it, Simon, is the fact that you spoke. And one of the things we know is that not just nervous flyers, but just flyers and people who've yet to admit to being nervous, they quite like to hear from somebody at the front, because obviously you're this sort of disembodied voice now, and behind your bulletproof door, so they can't imagine what might be going on, what you're like, and so whenever you speak, it's massively helpful. And that was a really nice way of doing it. If you literally said it like that, it sounds really natural, like, so a professional just chatting to you, like, oh, by the way, we knew about this. I like that. That's really good.
Yeah. That's two of the issues that we have, really. We'd love to be able to speak to people every time. And we'd love to put the seatbelt signs on whenever there's any chance of turbulence. That's always a bit of a judgment call. If there's any doubt, we put the seatbelts on. But sometimes you think, you've got 3 or 4 babies on the flight. It's the middle of the night. You know that they're in their sky cots safe. It's a big deal when you put the seatbelt signs on. In days gone by, when we had bars on the aeroplanes and stuff, the crew, if it was getting a bit rowdy, would sometimes say, can you just pop the seatbelt signs on to empty the bar? Because we've asked them quite a few times, and people are trying to sleep and they're getting a bit rowdy, and we don't want to spoil their 50th birthday party.
Yes.
And you think, but if I do that, I've got to wake up babies. I've got to, it's a big deal putting the seatbelt signs on, unless you do actually think that you're going to come across it. And again, I'd love to put PAs out all the time to keep people. I like the sound of my own voice, if you haven't noticed. But again, you're going to disturb people. Some people on long haul flights, especially, some people pay a lot of money for comfortable seats so they can sleep to be fresh and ready for their business meeting in the morning. Others have spent a fortune, once in a lifetime trip for their 50th birthday with their friends, and they want to party. And it's quite hard for the crew sometimes to find that balance to satisfy everybody. It's
you caught that really nicely, actually, that sort of that tension between different people, what they need, and but that's really interesting. All right, then let's go. So what other things do you think bother people? I know turbulence, that's a good one. In my mind, it's things like the stages of flight, understanding what happens at 1,500 feet and all that sort of stuff. How do you talk around? I mean, maybe you disagree with me, there's something else that's more obvious, but I think that for me would be up in the top sort of 3 or 4.
Yeah, it is. I get a lot of people asking why it sounds like the engines have failed at 1,000 or 1,500 feet just after takeoff, and it feels like they're dropping out of the sky. Another one on the same vein is in turbulence we dropped thousands of feet or hundreds of feet. And I think that one can be explained away reasonably easily to people by one, how pilots are tricked by a flight simulator. We don't move anywhere in that little box. It rotates and it turns and twists. We think we're braking hard. We're doing 45-degree bank turns. We're accelerating, climbing, descending. But actually, it's just that box with a little movement, and the visual cues inside tricks our brain into thinking that we're doing all of these crazy movements. Sat down the back in you've got very little visual references as a passenger. And if the aircraft moves a little bit and then your brain doesn't sense it's leveled out, it can continue to think that it's dropping, it's decelerating, so your brain can be tricked a lot. So that one after takeoff, for instance, we may need almost full power to safely get airborne and climb away. But once we're at 1,000 feet, we don't need all that power. So why waste the engines? Why put out loads of noise? Why burn extra fuel? Everyone's really conscious about the environment and carbon footprint. So we'll reduce the power to the next amount we can drop back to safely for the climb. But that comes with it a bit of a disadvantage for the passenger who just sees they can feel by the seat of their pants that the aircraft's changed its attitude somewhat. The nose has dropped a little bit. We bring the power back at the same time, and that's exactly what a flight simulator does to tell you you're descending. So to them, it can feel like they're descending with no visual references. So they get tricked into thinking that they're dropping when actually we're still climbing at 500 to 1,000 feet per minute. So if you look at 1,000-foot block of flats in a big city, we're climbing that whole block of flats in a minute, even when it feels to a passenger down the back that we're dropping. That's the reality of what's happening. So it's trying to explain people to that. So I've done a few videos on that, explaining people. That seems to put people's mind at rest. And then the turbulence one, what often gets misconstrued by the wonderful media is that an aircraft dropped 4,000 feet due to turbulence. What actually happened is the aircraft was rumbled around a little bit, and then the pilots found that instead of 40,000 feet is really bad turbulence, but 36,000 feet is light turbulence or none. So they just send 4,000 feet. That gets put out into the media that an aircraft dropped 4,000 feet. So I've recorded a video safely in the cruise when there were other pilots flying, in turbulence, that it moves about 5 feet, the altimeter, and it felt like to us we were really getting shaken around, but the speed was within 5 miles per hour, and the altitude was 5 to 10 feet, and the autopilot just slowly corrects itself back because it likes to be exactly at the right altitude. So yeah, that's one of the worries that people have. So once you clear that up and they have that education, that understanding, they then aren't scared about it anymore.
Yeah,
because they understand what's happening. But it's slowly going through these fears that people have and trying to reassure them. And then
I think
there's
that's
you
brilliant.
get some very good reports from people. It's 15 years I haven't gotten on an airplane, and now I can visit my daughter in Vancouver, or because and I think you've just educated yourself. I've put out some simple information, but it's made a huge difference to some people. So that there's a lot of job satisfaction there. But yeah, your original point, it's the turbulence is quite easily explained, as is the your brain being tricked into descending.
No, that's good. I like the sort of like linking it to a big sort of high-rise block of flats. That's what you're doing every minute. That's really helpful, isn't it? Because when you look out the window, you can't really calibrate at all, and so that's a really helpful way for people to think, oh, you're the gift that keeps on giving. Let's get some more. Okay, so other things that people worry about in terms of the safety now is the security, sometimes the terrorism, that side of it. I think particularly since 9/11, for those who flew before, it would have had a very different experience to how it is now. Even though I thought, I was flying then, I thought it was really, really safe then. I didn't think of it as any less safe. But now it's just been ratcheted up even more so with the sort of the way that you get security scanned, the liquids and all that sort of stuff. What's your take on all of that?
The ground job that I did gave me a real insight to just how much planning, thought, experts, different agencies, from the worldwide agencies get involved in these sort of decisions, and intelligence and lots of learning points, and you do just have to it's at some point you have to just put a bit of faith in the sort of authorities and the agencies that are responsible for it, and they have the bigger picture.
Yes.
And it's a frustration now, and I do notice people are getting frustrated easier these days, but I think you just have to, for the sake of a few minutes, I think everyone's better off to be safe. And it's not just what you mentioned, it's people sneaking alcohol onto aeroplanes. It's again education. People don't understand what is and isn't dangerous on an aeroplane. So people will complain about, I can take my phone on an aeroplane because that battery's safe, but I can't take my hoverboard or this piece of medical equipment that I need because the battery in it hasn't been cleared and tested. So when you're allowed to take something onto an aeroplane, it's because it's been tested, it's been proven to be safe. If there's even a tiniest chance of something going wrong, like everyone's mobile phone, there is a chance that 1 in a million might heat up and get hot. So we have procedures on board. We have, bags on board which contain the heat, cool it down, and stop it becoming a real danger. All of these things go on in the background. You just have to have the faith that someone's thought about it, made a sensible decision, and they don't think that, even if it's a small risk, they've decided that that risk isn't safe to take. Um, so yeah, I get on board every day, and I feel safe. I thank the security, no matter how, even if I've taken my flight bag through hundreds of times in the last couple of years with the same thing in. If next Tuesday they take it out and say this needs to be checked, it's just be patient, let them do their job, and then get on with your day.
That's a good way to look at it. So in terms of the terrorism side of it, you've covered that nicely. I think that understanding how much is going on in the background is really helpful for people. So can I ask you some random questions that sort of people, I'm sure there's other topics, but you've got a really nice way of explaining things. So I think I kind of want to take advantage of that, because I'm thinking of the nervous flyer listening to this. So one of the things that people worry about is, we have to put all our things in flight mode, and the classic one. I was flying the other day, and somebody was using their phone, and it wasn't in flight mode. I don't think it was anyway. And I know the answer to this, but I'd like your description, why that would, why it's a thing. Is it a problem? Do your magic.
So when mobile phones first came out, they could interfere with some of the instruments. We like to tell the customers the same sort of thing, so it reassures them, and everyone knows the rough procedures and what's expected of them. There are certain times on board an aeroplane that you want people to pay attention to safety cards, to safety briefs, and having things in aeroplane mode reduces the distraction a little bit in somewhat. Years and years ago, as I say, phones could interfere. There's still a chance, but I think the biggest threat really is 400 phones all trying to log on to a network coming into land into America, and you must have put a mobile phone near a speaker before and heard the we don't want any chance of that coming through the headphones. We don't want any sort of interference, and we do so it's still a procedure that, again, people have looked at, and they've looked at what the risk is, and you can see now that certain devices can be left to be used. Others are just in flight mode, so they aren't transmitting big, powerful signals to try and log on to a phone mast. And slowly, I think, as phone developers make their transmission and receiving software, safer, or hardware safer, we can start to change procedures. And I think we've started to see that a little bit. But it's still, each airline has different procedures. They all have different aeroplanes. Some aeroplanes flying around are 30 years old. Some are 3 months old. Just trust that the safety card and that the cabin crew know what they're talking about, and that there's a reason for it. And I'm sure everyone can wait for their 10 more minutes for their mobile phone signal till you land and you're in the airport terminal.
Yeah, well, maybe not. FOMO. So that was great. I think another one which comes up a lot, and I think this will be perfect for you with your engineering background, is, and they're kind of linked, this thing around engine failure, not flying over land versus flying over sea, flying at night. All these things conjure up lots of images, questions, and worries in people's minds. But if we start with talking about engine failure and why the routing that you do, and how neat, because this flying across the water thing is a big deal, as you know. So anything like that would be really helpful. So I feel like I'm dumping on you, Simon. No, but you just got a really nice way of describing stuff.
So firstly, I think the easiest way to prove how safe the engines are, and how very, very rarely we have any issues with them at all, never mind them failing, is if you think of all the pilots and the cabin crew and all of their partners, wives, kids, people that they love. If every time you went to work, you were hearing about, did you hear about this aircraft had an engine failure? Oh, this one for, Singapore Airlines had an engine failure. American had an engine failure. It very, very rarely happens amongst all of the aircraft, on Earth. It's very, very rare. And that's because, again, the engine manufacturers learn that any issues, any failures, and they get rid of those failures. So the engines are super, super safe. I suppose the second one is that we plan for the absolute worst, even though the chances are so, so slim. we before we even get off the ground, we know where we would divert to, where we would turn to for the entire route. And we have, it's not just a guess, finger in the air type thing. It's written down, it's regulated, and it's legal. We have to have a certain distance or a time to an airport at all times. So, and they've worked out the chances of probability we can get there absolutely no problems whatsoever, even with one engine. The third thing I think as well is that um, we have two engines, but really we only need one. We can do everything with that aeroplane with just one engine, and we do it a lot of the time in the simulator. Every single time we get in the simulator, we do lose an engine to whatever reason, whether it just flames out, whether we have bird strike, whether we have a fire, a failure, or it's vibrating, so we shut it down to be safe. So we're constantly practicing flying around on one engine. We can cancel an approach and we can fly around. We can cruise for hours to a different airport. And we can do everything that we do normally with two engines. The second engine really is there for efficiency. It allows us to fly higher. It allows us to fly where the engine's a lot more efficient and burn less fuel. It allows us to go further, and it's a huge redundancy thing. We only really need one, but we've got two. So if one fails, we're still perfectly fine. So yeah, the engine failure thing really is, we have two. They're tested to destruction. They know exactly when they do actually fail, and then they take a huge margin off, and then a bit more of a margin off, and then the maintenance procedures, fix, repair, service anything that could go wrong before it has any chance of going wrong. So they're incredibly reliable. And yeah, hopefully that again reassures people that wherever we are in the world, even when we're over high terrain, we fly to India over the Himalayas, we have a plan for and it's briefed to the pilots. If we lose an engine here, this is how we're going to turn. This is how we're going to turn away from the high terrain. Because with one engine, we can only fly at, say, 23,000 feet. That mountain would be an issue. So our routing would be away from the mountain. Worst case scenario all the time in case we ever need it. But yeah, hopefully that reassures people that they have.
I think so. Yeah, I think it does. I mean, they also, people have similar things when it comes to flying over water and flying at night. Anything you'd like to add about that?
For the pilots, really, once we're up at altitude, we don't need to really see out the window. It's nice, it's a beautiful view, but everything in the aircraft's set up to not see out the window, because when we're in weather or cloud, we can't see out the window. So whether it's dark or light, it's really it doesn't change for a commercial pilot. Really, we could be in cloud and not see. It could be dark. There's no real difference. We can still see everything we need to, because the radar is our eyes, air traffic control are our eyes, other aircraft are our eyes, our instruments. And so really flying at night, it's no difference. Landing at night is not really hugely different. So yeah, I can see why looking out into the, out of the windows and it's just pitch black. It can be ominous to people, but yeah, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. And again, landing over, flying over water, we always have an option. But when we're flying over Central Europe, we have options. We don't really want to be using that option, and the chances are we won't have to. So whether we use an option over water or whether we use an option over a huge continent, we're still diverting because of a problem or a medical or a So yeah, it's just it's a mindset really. Which pilots and crew are lucky enough to have an insight into. But yeah, the customers.
Well, I think the thing that's really nice about that is that you're talking about all the redundancies or capacity with normal people would say, because but that I think no single point of failure idea is just
what's really interesting is the whole psyche of passengers and myself before I was a pilot and everyone else. It's a real natural normal thing to be worried, to be concerned when you don't understand something and it's an alien environment. But what is really interesting is that people will leave their house and they'll sometimes travel like 4 hours on several different modes of transport. I love Uber drivers. I think they're great and interesting, but you'll jump into an Uber and you'll drive across central London, and that's the chances where you're having, people who might not be insured, might not even have a license. They haven't serviced the cars on the road, not the Uber drivers, other users. And, that's the person who could crash into you or cause you an issue. You know, when you're transiting across London on the tube, or you're walking across streets, and there's, you know, there could be drunk drivers, there could be any issues, and multiple people do that without even thinking. But the second they get to the airport, the most dangerous part of their journey's out of the way by a million times, but they'll be terrified about, you know, an aircraft and a highly qualified pilot and a route that's been flown a lot of times. And as I said, days and weeks of thought going into each flight with the planning. And that's when they worry.
Well,
it's very
there's a lot
unusual.
to do with control as well, isn't it, for a lot of people,
it's,
you know.
It's
we do have one of the behavior patterns that I sometimes talk about is that you've probably got 1 in 5 of your passengers are standby pilots. So they're waiting, they're flying the flight for you. They're keeping an eye on your flight map, and they're on standby in case you need them, you know, because they can't relax the whole time. And so you've got all of those people you can call upon should you need them, you know, to check in with them. And quite a lot of nervous flyers have said that they would literally, although they said, I know it's crazy, but I stay alert because, you know, just in case, you know, I think, well, what do you think is going to happen? The Simon's going to pop down and say, got this tricky landing. What do you think?
The one volunteer we do tend to use sometimes on an airplane is the medically qualified ones. You know, because if we've got a sick passenger on board, the crew are trained to a very high standard. They've got a lot of medical equipment, but you can't beat a doctor or someone who's really qualified. You know, I think let the experts do their job, the pilots, the crew, and as I say, the passengers are probably not the best qualified to control an aeroplane. They'll all have their own superb skill that I wouldn't go near, you know, and I would trust them at times. But yeah, that's the best thing. But they're also, I think it's just people watch the wrong things as well. They're you know, if you're worried about anything, the natural thing. I'll hold my hands up. Before I went to the Caribbean and did a lot of swimming, I was terrified of sharks. Whenever I got into the water, I thought, you know, really unrealistic worry or fear. But I thought it would be me. I'd be the person the shark would bite. Spent a lot of time in the Caribbean with people who are diving, snorkeling, swimming, you know, chatted to the locals. Are there shark attacks? No. Are there sharks? Yes. Are there shark attacks? No. You know, and it was just a slow education for myself. It was experience. It was exposure to it myself. That was a bit of an unrealistic fear. And again, with flying, I hope to try and do that for people who are nervous, which is, you know, give them the realistic side of things, give them the simple explanations, the education, reassurance, and hopefully help
do that.
Get over their fears. One way of doing that is not to allow them to fly the plane.
Yeah, please. We'll let you do that. So let's go for, people will be going, oh, you know, ask him all this, ask him about that. But I think there's a general sort of theme that I often say to people, that there's come some point that there's only so many what if questions you can ask a pilot. At the end of the day, you'll have to make a decision about, who do I trust? You know, am I going to put it into this? Because I won't have all my questions answered, but that's not your job. Your job's to let them do that. So if you were to kind of to sum up, like, your best kind of tips, advice, wisdom in terms of why people shouldn't be worried about flying, what would you say?
It goes back to that point I said earlier. The pilots and crew, and even the airport staff and air traffic control, we hear about the actual real incidents and the real issues and things that have gone wrong on an everyday basis. We even get trained against them happening to ourselves. So we get full exposure to the worst side of aviation, if you want to call it that. You know, what can go wrong and what can worry us. We also fully go through all of the drills and the procedures when it does go wrong. You know, into swimming pools, slides coming out of the doors, and all the rest of it, and all of and we still, knowing all of that, get on board airplanes with big smiles on our face. And we can't wait. You know, I wake up, and when my alarm goes off, and my wife will say, "God, you get up every day and you just, like, for work, and you never are annoyed about going to work or upset about going to work. You're always happy." And she's cabin crew as well, so she sees the same side of it. But yeah, that amount of people worldwide who get on airplanes, having heard and seen the worst, it isn't actually that bad. And that's the realism of it. All of the things that passengers rightly worry about, and, you know, I understand why they do. the people who witness it, hear about it, experience it from friends and colleagues, they get on aeroplanes absolutely fine, because it really is extremely rare for things
Yes.
to go wrong. And when they do go wrong, actually for us, a diversion to another airport, a cancelled approach where we just, take off again and come round, and that's the safest thing to do. And we land again the second time round. No one gets hurt, no one gets harmed. It's a safe thing to do.
Yeah.
And people continually get into aeroplanes, as I say, hearing the worst. So it can't be that bad, can it? And it isn't that bad. People should get reassurance from
Yeah.
that, really, I think.
Well, definitely. I mean, that is just diamond. Simon, that was brilliant. Honestly, that was really lovely stuff. And I'd love to just ask you, because you've got such a nice way of explaining things. It's very kind of normalizing,
you.
and
Yeah.
that's very helpful. And so if anybody wants to follow you, I mean, there might be a couple of people who aren't, I would be very surprised in this group. Most of them have mentioned your videos and already, so I guess you've probably got quite a huge following. But if anybody is looking for you, then your Instagram and all the rest of it will put.
Yeah, they're all the same. There's TikTok and Instagram mainly, which is Flyman _Simon, my name. So it should be like Pieman, Simon the Pieman, Flyman Simon. That's right. So
how did you come up with the name for it? Because there's quite a few pilots out there that are doing this now, but there's what I liked about yours is you're thinking about the end user, and so there are some pilots. I won't name them, but it's almost like, are you a pilot or are you a model? Which is it?
Yeah,
they're the ones I mean.
I did a lot of research into the sort of social media side of things, and because it's quite hard to break out these days with there's so much saturation in every industry, and it's really hard to. So I did quite a bit of research, and one of the top tips was that your handle or your name on social media should tell people, one, your name, so they know who you are and they can relate to the human side, and two, you should just be able to read someone's handle and what are they about.
Yeah.
If you have to watch 3 or 4 videos to realize what they're about, and that's confusing, then you're going to have no idea. So I thought, well, it rhymes. It's easy when I tell people, and it's so Flyman Simon, and it conveniently fits into the shape of an aeroplane, which is my branding. So I've kept it at that. It seems to work. People recognize it and they talk about it on board. The crew will go, I'm sure I know your face from somewhere. We must have flown together, and then they'll. You're the TikTok guy. You're the you answer people's questions. So Flyman _Simon. It's on TikTok and Instagram. If everyone could follow me on Instagram, that would be amazing. Because I'm trying to build that up a little bit.
Yeah, one to plug. So generally, what's the big plan for you? What's next? I mean, you're a captain now, which is great.
Yeah,
but
that takes a lot of my time.
Yes,
obviously. And then it's just trying to build the social media side of things, really, where it gets to a point where I can answer the videos, and that keeps the social media side going. And then get some of the books out there, and then eventually some sort of course, whether it would be a downloadable one that you just watch or interact with, as opposed to one-on-one meeting. So just so I can get out and help as many people as possible. Really, it seems to get people on airplanes and help people. So it keeps me out of the pub. I tend to go to the gym and do some work on this down route now, as opposed to I've seen all the sights of the different places that we go. There's always still something else to do that's amazing with the crew and the pilots. But it really keeps me entertained. It's something I love. It's something I can do for the next 20 years till the end of my career.
That's great.
So that's it, really.
I think I can't speak for everybody, but I just think it's amazing what you're doing. There's a lot of people out there that need help, and it's great that there's people like you doing the stuff you do and the way you do it, which is unique to you. You've got a really nice style of really normalizing it, which I think is like I got
to say, I've got a lot of inspiration from you. I saw your book with Richard Branson on the front when I was on the ground. And had a little read of it and thought it was fantastic. You've done years and years and years of dedication to courses now, which I think is a great thing. Hopefully
I'll cut this bit out at the end. That's just embarrassing.
Hopefully we can all work together. I'd love to come back on again and chat about different areas of topics. See what went down well and what other people want to hear more or less about. And
well, if you wouldn't mind, that'd be brilliant. Yeah, honestly.
It would be great, Paul. So thanks.
Because I think there's people often have questions, and if we have a bit of warning, because I wasn't quite sure if we'd get it together with rosters and all the rest of it, but if I thought it was definitely going to go ahead, I would have probably got a bunch of questions, because you've got such a lovely way to describe it. I think people really
we'll do that
benefit
next
from
time.
that.
Do a quick fire,
Okay.
quick fire round of questions that people
All
want
right.
to.
Yeah, because nothing threw you, did it? You like straight back. Yeah, nice little way. So this is our goal then, is to try and catch you out. What can we ask him? Yeah, that was really good. Thank you. Really grateful, and really nice to properly meet you. And thanks again, Simon. Keep doing what you're doing, mate. It's awesome. Awesome stuff.
You too. Brilliant. Thanks so much, Paul.
Thank you.
Speaking to you. Bye. I hope you got a lot out of that podcast video. Wasn't it great? If you'd like to see the next episode where I get those quick fire questions to see if I trip up on any or don't know the answers, then we will link the video here. So go watch that next. Anything else? Look in the description for the links to resources for help for fear of flying. Fly happy, fly safe.